This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Forget the frustration of picking commerce platforms when you switch your business to Shopify, the global commerce platform that supercharges your selling wherever you sell. With Shopify, you'll harness the same intuitive features, trusted apps, and powerful analytics used by the world's leading brands. Sign up today for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/tech, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/tech.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/SBO. Terms and conditions apply.
You are listening to episode 7 of Flixwatcher podcast. I'm Helen.
And I'm Kobe. On this episode of the podcast, we have Dave and Jen from the Family Tree podcast, which is a mad, surreal story drama podcast. I can't explain it, just go and listen. It's amazing and crazy and superb. Today we're going to be talking about The Little Prince, the Netflix original animation based off the classic kids book, which I've never heard of before. So thank you
very famously. Come find us on Twitter at FlixWatcherPod. Visit the website flixwatcher.tv for full listings, and don't forget to subscribe to us on iTunes and leave us an awesome review.
Just as a bit of a warning, there is some bad language and there will be spoilers. You have been warned.
Hi, and welcome to this edition of Flixwatcher. And today we are joined by Dave and Jen. If you want to say hi, introduce yourselves and tell us where we can find you.
Right, so my name's Dave Pickering. I make a podcast called Getting Better Acquainted, which is a show where I talk to my closest friends and families, from my parents and people who are very close to me, to someone who I might have once bumped into at a party, and then decide to get them on my show and talk to them about their lives and their experiences. And I've been doing that for around 5 years, when I decided to make a spin-off podcast that was taking my brand, if you like, of being a kind of open and honest person, and flipping it on the head, and basically making a show that's a bunch of lies. And that is that I do with the other guest who's here today, who is...
Hi, I'm Jen Adamthwaite, and I'm the other half of that project, which is the Family Tree, which you can find at thefamilytreepodcast.co.uk.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, and Jen is my partner in real life, but also my podcast partner in crime, and she is hardly heard at all in the Family Tree, but she's a massive part of it. Unfortunately, the way we've run that show is that it's quite unclear that anybody else is involved in it apart from me. So it is very necessary to say that as many times as possible.
Talk us through why you chose Little Prince and the synopsis of what happens in it.
Okay, so I chose The Little Prince because it's a book that I remember from my childhood. I actually don't remember so much reading the book originally as hearing the book as a story tape. I think it was Willie Russell or someone like that reading it out. And it had a very big place in my heart, and I did read the book as well. And then I saw that Netflix was bringing out The Little Prince, and I thought, wow, I have to see that. I also have a big love of children's animation, if you like, although I don't know if animation should necessarily have the word children's
I don't think
before
it needs to.
And certainly The Little Prince, the book and the film, I think, say a lot of things to adults. But the synopsis of the film is different from the synopsis of the book. In the film, they've created a new character of a little girl in the kind of modern times, who is very adult in the way that she is taught by her mum to engage with the world. And she learns about the Little Prince and the story of the Little Prince through the character who's in the book of the Aviator. And in the book, basically, it's a story about a little boy who is kind of ignored, his creativity is ignored, and then when he becomes an adult, he crashes a plane in a desert and he meets the Little Prince, and the Little Prince kind of teaches him as a man how to feel like a child again. And in this film, what happens is he, as a man, teaches a child how to be a child when she's kind of forgotten how to be a child. Basically, I think it's a synopsis. It might not be a right synopsis, but it's a synopsis.
Well, it works.
Yeah.
That's the film. I mean, I didn't know. I've never heard of this book before.
Right.
I don't know how. What have you guys heard? Have you read it before?
I've never read it, but I had heard of it. So sort of when I heard it, it was like, oh, so they've made a film version of it. But like you say, it's sort of the version is within another story.
Yeah.
So it's kind of not an actual version of the book, page for page.
Yeah.
I mean, you get the story of the Little Prince in this film.
Yeah.
There are some bits that are kind of different, but not very much. And the Little Prince, the original book, is quite kind of serious and philosophical and kind of pretty deep and certainly sad. And this film had a lot of that in, but the modern stuff made, I think, in a nice way, took some of the edge off that sadness. I think it had a little less sadness in this film than the actual original book. So
do you think it kind of augmented it slightly, or were you initially annoyed that there's this girl character and her mum occupying so much time in the story, or were you kind of thinking?
Well, that's an interesting question. Yeah, I think I spent the first 20 minutes of the film going, okay, what are they doing? Like, not in that I didn't like it yet. I was just like hedging my bets. Like, I don't want to commit to this because I don't really know where they're going with it. And then like around 20 minutes in, I was like, no, this is actually, I feel like this is a safe pair of hands and I can actually relax into this and actually enjoy what it's trying to do. And I think it's really important as well. I mean, I read a little bit about it on Wikipedia after watching it, and the director decided to make it a girl character because there's not enough representation of girls in film, and I totally support that. And the little people, the young people in my life are all nieces, majority of them in my family, so I really want them to be represented on screen. So I was wicked excited about that element of it. But I think that it's not a problem at all to have that double kind. And also, what's nice about it is, of course, there is also a boy. I mean, the Little Prince is a boy, so there's plenty of representation for two of the many genders.
What were your thoughts, Jen?
I had like Helen heard of the book, but didn't really know it. I thought I knew it. I thought I knew the story, but it turned out I was getting confused with The Selfish Giant. So it was completely new to me. So I was just kind of hearing the story for the first time, and I really enjoyed it. I don't know if I wouldn't say it wasn't a kids' film, but I didn't really feel like it was particularly a kids' film. Do you know what I mean? It sort of seemed to speak to adults. I felt like it was quite an adult story that it was telling, or a story about childhood for adults, perhaps.
Right, and you work with kids, and so that's kind of like a good perspective, like that you've got of like whether this is going to work for the age group it's supposed to be aimed at. I guess
I'm not sure what age group is it supposed to be aimed at. Do you think?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I assume anyone sort of 5 and up, I guess.
Yeah.
It's probably
it's a family film. I guess, isn't it? So it's
maybe
supposed to appeal to adults too. I think that's it's the classic as well. The book in itself will be remembered by quite old adults now. I don't think it's so like I'm 35, but I think adults who are older than me will probably get even more of a kick out of the words "The Little Prince" than I do. But I mean, what for primary school kids? Do you think they'll get much out of it? I guess.
Well, I think they would probably get something out of it, but I think maybe the pace is a little bit different than what children expect from films now. I think children, a lot of sort of, I don't know, the Pixar and the Disney, the pace is a bit different. This felt not slow. It did feel a little bit long, but that might be because I was expecting it to be in 2 parts, and so I kept thinking, we haven't even ended the first part yet, and I don't know why I thought it was. Why did I think it was going to be?
I don't know why you did that. No.
I thought it was 2 parts anyway, so I kept thinking the first part was going to end, and it never did. So I was thinking, oh my god, it's going to be really, really long. So maybe that was me that brought that in, but I didn't feel like it was. Maybe because it flips in between the paper animation and the CGI.
Yeah, there's 2 animation styles.
Isn't
there a bit of traditional animation in there as well?
At the very beginning.
Yeah.
There's that, isn't there? Yeah, so I think that maybe it sort of felt like, waves rather than something with a lot of momentum behind it.
And those waves are quite true to the original book as well, because the original book, I would say, is a kind of a graphic novel. There's like words and then there's the pictures, and I feel like this film had like the CGI and then there's the pictures, and so I kind of like felt like that was quite true to the way that the experience of reading the book is.
That's pretty interesting. That, I mean, as someone who works with kids, so you work at a primary school, do you?
Yeah.
How? Because I was kind of wondering, in terms of the pacing, in terms of how kids might receive this film. Do you think they would engage with the girl character would they sympathise with her, or would they think, oh no, she's not one of us, because she's set up as being, her mum being putting so much pressure on her to perform.
I think that might be something that they perhaps could relate to. I think children like a hard done by child. I definitely did when I was little, and
like Annie
think
or
of
something.
or
Charlie
even like
in the chocolate factory, yeah.
Even Harry Potter in his cupboard before he goes to.
Yeah.
I think children have that melodramatic streak, and they want to identify with. It might be that there is something big that they can identify with, but it might just be that that they're just feeling oppressed by their parents, and it's nice to identify with somebody you feel is kind of hard done by. So I think there's that, and there's also there is a lot of pressure in school to with tests and often, especially in London, actually parents put quite a lot of pressure on their children to do well and go to whatever school they're thinking of. So I think perhaps they could relate to that too. So I definitely think there's stuff in there for them.
I mean, I definitely think it speaks to adults a lot, though, because it is about being how rubbish it is to be an adult and how rubbish it is to be an adult before your time. And I mean, the original book, is about like how we crush creativity. Like when you draw a picture, adults go, that's not a real thing.
Yeah.
And you're drawing what's in your imagination. And I think it brought out those themes really well. I think the film in general went to loads of different places that I wasn't expecting, but I had quite a lot of experiences of like, I just really like it when, things all kind of get spun around. Like I really like there's scenes where there's glow stars on the walls of her bedroom.
Yeah.
So that's her kind of like secret rebellion.
That's her acting out, isn't it?
Childhood. Yeah, exactly. And I like those kind of moments, and I like when they came back later on.
I had those when I was a kid.
Right.
I used to love those
too.
so much.
Yeah.
The simple things when back in the 80s.
Yeah, but what was nice about it was that it was a secret, like it was her secret,
yeah, for her particularly,
in her context,
Yeah.
because her mum didn't know about it, and she kind of had this kind of secret life around it. And I guess, I mean, I think there's it felt very Roald Dahl as well, I think. So I hope that is something that kids would respond, would enjoy.
Yes, I think that's true.
Like the aviator character is kind of like Willy Wonka or something, in that he's not very safe. Like in modern terms as well, like this is a little girl just wandering through a hedge into an old man's house. There's something quite creepy about that if you take it the wrong way.
And the old man had earlier on in the film, like destroyed part of their house with a propeller blade.
Right.
So why? Yeah. So rightly, the mother was like, "Well, you're not going to hang out with that guy,
right?
Because he's insane."
Yeah.
But then there's that kind of the precocious child wanting to see what's in the side of the hedge. There's a plane in there. Of course, you're going to be interested as a child if you've got any kind of imagination. You've got any kind of free spirits in her. And it was kind of actually nice to see that there was, because at the start of the film, she's sitting at an audition or interview to go into a school, and she seemed really kind of taken by her mum's position of wanting to perform really well to go into school. So you kind of thought, that's why I asked Jen about the question whether kids would empathise with that kind of character, whereby she seems like a bit of a stick in the mud. So at this point, when she goes through the hedge, it's kind of everyone seeing that she has got something, a spark about her.
Right.
And I thought that was really cool in seeing that and rebelling against her mum and things like that.
Yeah, and like in the original book, the death within the original book is the death of the little prince, which, spoiler alert, is retold in this film. But like what I liked about this film as well is that it wasn't just about kind of coming to terms with death. It was also coming to terms with age as well as like adulthood. Like it was all about like the old man, you know, he doesn't die in the film, but he's heading towards death, and she is coming to terms with the idea that she actually becomes more adult as she's allowed to be more of a child. The more she's allowed to have her imagination, the more responsibility she takes for like actually being there for this man. I mean, those are some of the bits I really like when she like jumps on the bike and chases after the ambulance and doesn't care.
That was pretty. It's
like,
pissing with rain, and she's disobeying her mother, and
she's just going against all adult rules in that moment because she loves and cares about this person, and she feels like she's let him down by not being there for him. And that's a really adult decision to make, but it's a really dangerous decision to make if you're a child, because you're not safe. You're just riding on a bike in the rain after an ambulance, you know? I mean, so those were the moments where I was like really taken in, I guess, and really engaged.
I kind of thought it was interesting when I heard you'd chosen this, because obviously the book is so old that there'd not been at least a more prominent version or even a version of it, which I think kind of watching this is kind of, I don't think it's particularly works well as trying to bring to life, because like you say, you know, some of the pages are mainly illustrations. And I really like what they've tried to do with it, but as a kids' film, I think it's a little bit confused. I think if I was watching this and I was a child, maybe 6 or 7, I'd probably find it a little bit confusing.
No, I agree with that.
And it loses a bit of coherence, and the bit where we kind of leave the book and we leave the aviator sort of telling the story with her, that's when it starts to get just a little bit more sort of confusing, and that's where I kind of waned interest a little bit, because I really loved the bringing the book to life with all the animations and kind of like the sort of stop animation look that it had. And I think that kind of worked well. But once the aviator leaves and we go on to sort of the third part of the story, as it is, I could kind of see what it was trying to do, but I don't think it quite achieved it in a way that the earlier parts of the film achieve those things that you were saying.
Yeah, I mean, it made a very strange decision in that third act of having the little prince come back to life as well. Like, I mean, for a bit,
sort of a random kind of nobody who's just, you know, not a pen pusher because he's a cleaner,
but he's grown up and all of that stuff, which I felt like I did like that, and in some ways, like I liked what it goes a bit Brazil basically, like in the third act, and I like Brazil, and I like the politics and the philosophical messages of that third act, but it definitely was a bit more confused than the other stuff. And I definitely would I guess that's my reservation for this film for children, not for adults. I think I would recommend it to lots of adults, but I don't know. Like I can't imagine watching it with any of my nieces, even if they are represented by the fact that there's a girl in it. You know.
I think that third act almost feels like, you know, when you get sort of they do it with kids' films a lot. You get the first film, which was excellent, and they make a second film, and then they're almost just on too much of a high, and then they make the third one, and the third one just as
right,
just
Shrek
killed.
3.
Yeah, right.
So you think they did that all in one film?
Yeah, pretty much. I know, which makes it sound like I hated the third act, and I didn't. And there were things about the ending that I liked, but I agree that it was a little bit more confusing at the end, and it lost some of what was good about the first couple of bits in that third.
Yeah, I think in the third act, the real world stuff is still great.
Yes.
I like the real world stuff in the third act a lot, but when it becomes kind of this metaphysical journey, that's when those are the bits that don't land so well.
Yeah. Although I did really enjoy the fox in the third act, where the fox sort of gets his little personality and.
Oh yeah, the toy fox you're talking about, the cuddly toy.
Oh
that was
yeah,
great. That was really nice. But that's what was nice about that was because it was from the real world and then it became alive.
Yeah.
Like, that was what was nice about it.
So do you think we are kind of spoilt nowadays by Aardman, Pixar, and the recent crop of Disney films that The Little Prince doesn't get much of a look in nowadays, or how does it kind of?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Is it fair to judge it under those same terms?
I mean, I think it's definitely a different kind of a film, and I do love a lot of modern day animation, but not just Aardman and Pixar, also
Studio Ghibli. You're going to say, aren't you? I knew you were going to say that.
I mean, and actually, like I can see Studio Ghibli taking this story. I mean, I'd love to see The Little Prince done by Murasaki. I think that would be that would be a brilliant combination. I think The Little Prince has the same kind of weird philosophical moments where things kind of happen in weird ways. But I think, I think this is it's not going to compete with those films very well. I don't know if we're spoiled. Like, I think it's great. Like, I don't feel like it's a bad thing. Like, that we've got too much animation.
Although I think that we maybe tend to expect one thing from children's films in a way that we don't from adult films. Like, we're much more likely to categorise adult films into different genres and accept that this is one kind of film and this is another kind of film. And I don't think we do that so much with children's films.
Right. I mean, that's a good point, actually. This is like an art film.
That's a fair point, actually, isn't it?
You know?
So when me and Helen know each other through going to the film quiz together, and one of the questions was last night about Pixar's been nominated for 10 animation Oscars, but is animation a genre?
Right.
It's just a type of storytelling, isn't it?
Yeah, and it just tends to be that it's always kind of, it's automatically all the bigger children's films from that year are sort of banded up together and put into there, whereas shouldn't it be that they kind of get entered into more of a category rather than just because it's animated? And then often lots of smaller animation films or perhaps a foreign animation don't really get a look in, and it's 8 out of 10 Pixar films have won the best animated film, which doesn't really leave much of a space for anyone else in there, really.
But also with Pixar, we've got to a point where it's not even I don't think Pixar films are consistent anymore. Like, there are still brilliant Pixar films that are made, but there's been enough mediocre or bad ones now that it's not even like you definitely know that Pixar's going to be good, but you do know it's going to sell out the box office, which is an unfortunate position for it to have got to, because it was so refreshing when Pixar started.
So over-reliance on sequels now,
right,
which is obviously probably, I'd say, is the main problem with Pixar, that something becomes popular. We don't need 2, 3, 4 versions of it.
Right.
Pick something original, or something like this. Reinvent, because they did a lot of classic children's stories like The Little Mermaid. See all those stories like that. It would have been interesting to see, what they might have done with this as an animation. In fact, I'm kind of surprised that maybe they didn't have a go at animating it.
Just with
I'm surprised that Disney didn't take it on ages ago, because it is a classic, isn't it? And so it is a surprise that it's not been made.
It's got no princess.
Right, but still, it's a prince. I mean, I guess that's true.
It's also the director of this is Mark Osborne, who is responsible for Kung Fu Panda.
Right.
Oh, really?
I looked that up, and we haven't seen Kung Fu Panda, either of us. So we were talking about, like, what's it like? Like, have you guys seen it?
Kung Fu Panda? Yeah, I've seen the first one.
Yeah, I've seen the first one.
But wasn't that interested in seeing subsequent ones.
Right, so it wasn't very good. That's my feeling.
I thought it was really good.
Yeah, it's
is it? It's good. Or not?
For Kung Fu Panda films.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not up there with Toy Story, but it's perfectly enjoyable animated film about a panda that knows kung fu.
When you're talking about sequels, I'm all for a continuation of the story and a continuation of hanging out with those same kind of characters. So I know Toy Story 4 is coming out, and I'm a bit concerned because the previous 3 have been absolute knockouts. But
they felt really like a trilogy as well, because I feel like
together in that
I'm
way.
a bit nervous. I didn't know about this, but now I'm nervous.
But if it does, if it does all come together, I'll be 100% behind it.
I don't really see how the story can go on for any more.
But that's for them to sort out. But when it comes to Kung Fu Panda, I really like the first one. But when I heard the second one was coming out, I just kind of went, I don't really care that much.
Right.
I don't know if that's again being spoiled by Disney. I didn't care that much for Shrek 2.
I hated Shrek 2. I loved Shrek 1, and I was so disappointed by Shrek 2.
I didn't see the Shrek 3.
I don't really have that much interest in Shrek. I think a problem with what's happened to children's films is that they've kind of gone too far in kind of making them appeal to adults, and that everything kind of has to be like an in-joke, or there has to be another layer on it, which the Little Prince didn't have. They didn't feel as though they needed to appeal to that wink, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, this joke's for adults, or this is the popular popular culture reference, or here's the pop song with the dance sequence in, which seems to be in every kind of kids film. So
And I think
this
a
is quite
successful children's story does appeal to adults anyway by the fact that it's a successful story
Yeah.
with good characters. And once you start being too knowing about it and putting all those jokes in,
It doesn't
sort
mean
of-
anything.
It
Well, I
doesn't
think
mean
it
anything.
depends,
no.
but I think all of that is dependent on the film, though, because like Zootopia or Zootropolis, as we're calling it over here for some reason, I really enjoyed that film, and I thought that the adult kind of nudge, wink elements of it were great, and I think that it's great. That I like the idea of people sort of sitting down as a family and being able to enjoy it on lots of different levels, and I don't think that when it's done well, I don't think it distracts from the quality of the children's storytelling part.
But then if you look at traditional kind of Roald Dahl, Matilda wasn't nudged
No,
wink,
sure.
wink to. So I don't think I can agree with you. It doesn't need to be, shouldn't be forced to try and appeal to a lot more broader market just to get the parents to take the kids to the cinema, so the parents know they don't have to
That's true.
be engaged. But I think when it's done well, it's
Yeah.
like, well, a round of applause. You've actually, as you grow up with the film, you'll see different things in it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really cool way of doing it.
And actually, I think, to be fair to Zootopia, the nudge, wink, wink element of that was about much more general kind of cultural things that I think kids will also got a lot of those
Sure.
references as well. So like that's the other thing. Like sometimes we underestimate what kids pick up and what kids get anyway. A lot of them will be laughing at the references, even if it's just because they've seen The Simpsons and so they know where all the references that The Simpsons gives you all of the film references for adults for the last 50 years.
Yeah.
So if you've seen The Simpsons, you can get most other jokes.
I think one of my favourite kids' films has been of recent years, or animations. I don't know what John want to put it into, but it was How to Train Your Dragon. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but I think
Seen it. I have seen it.
How to Train Your Dragon 1 and 2, and I just thought they weren't pandering to adults, but I think it's one of the most beautiful animations I've seen, and on the big screen is absolutely awesome. But it wasn't the typical Pixar of here's a joke for mum and dad.
Right.
It's just kind of a solid story of kids growing up with dragons.
Actually, that's quite a good example as well of a slightly more adult way of looking at film as well, because that one's a lot about the landscape and it's very beautiful.
It's absolutely stunning.
Which you often don't get in. It's often about I'm not saying this is a bad thing, but often children's films are more about the characters and maybe the world, but in quite a broad brushstroke kind of way. There's less of that kind of deep world going on behind it. And that is nice in How to Train Your Dragon. I think that there's much more of a sense of place.
Yeah.
I did quite like the casting in this.
I was going to say, yeah.
Who was the casting?
Well, Jeff Bridges, the Aviator. Which,
Oh, nice. Well, I've always got time for Jeff.
I think that's partly why I sort of lost a little bit of interest. Is after he's gone, I just kind of felt a lot of the magic was lost with him going. And this is how great he is. I do love Jeff Bridges. It's just with his voice, he manages to bring so much to it, to this quite small role. He's the character's not really in it that much, and just with that, I just really loved that. I thought that was a really inspired bit of casting with the use of a voice.
Yeah.
I can't think of a Jeff Bridges performance I haven't loved. Like even if it's been a terrible film, I've always loved him.
Tron Legacy.
I haven't seen that, but I can imagine that's a terrible film.
What's wrong with that?
Tron itself is a chronic film, but
I quite like Tron Legacy.
It's got a special place in my heart, but I do agree it's not necessarily. I wouldn't recommend it as a well-made film, but it's got a place in my heart.
I think maybe there's another different episode for Tron chat.
Tron Legacy.
But the other thing about the casting in The Little Prince is apparently, I was reading on Wikipedia about it, and the Little Prince is played by the son of the director. And originally, when he came up with the adaptation, he wanted the girl to be his daughter as well. But by the time it came into production, his daughter had grown too old to sound like a child anymore.
Okay.
But that was quite a nice little detail that I thought, yeah, that's interesting. I don't know if it added anything or took anything away from the film.
I think all those things kind of show that, for whatever reason, the director obviously was deeply in love with this project and kind of wanted to make it feel as special and as magical as possible. So I think that comes across in the way it's put together, the choice of casting, and just it feels very much like this is his project. He loves this story and has really just thought, I want more people to know about it. And, if you watch this and then go off and read the book, then that's kind of, or you've learned a lesson. It just really feels like something that he's genuinely got an interest in, not simply because, oh no, here's the next film I'm making, or, I'm going to make some money off it.
Yeah.
I mean, apparently he had a briefcase which he would open up and it had all of the pages of the basically a picture book that he'd made of the film that he would open up when he was pitching it and taking it around everywhere he went and trying to get people interested in the project. So I think you're absolutely right. That comes across, I feel like, and maybe that's why it's a little bit inaccessible as well, because when you love something so much, sometimes you don't necessarily communicate it to everybody else as well.
Who else was in the cast? Was it just Jeff Bridges of note and director's son? I know Ricky Gervais was in there.
Yeah, Ricky Gervais was in there.
I was trying to think now. I did look. I can't remember who the fox. I think the fox was James Franco.
Oh,
that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And was Marion Cotillard?
She was the rose. Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So even with the voices, I mean, it's well cast in that way. I think,
it's a proper A-list
really well,
cast of voice talent.
So should we go to
scores?
Yeah. I won't say the word, Helen.
Recommendability. It's first up. So on a scale of 1 to 5, how much would you recommend this film?
I mean, it's tough because I would recommend it differently to children or to adults, but I guess kind of going somewhere in the middle. I guess 2.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think so, because I'd recommend it to quite a lot of adults, but I would recommend it to not very many children, so it has to even out somewhere in the middle. So I think I'm going to go for maybe 3. Okay, let's go for 3.
Yeah, I think you like it more than
I do like the film. I do like the film. I would recommend it to some people.
Jen?
Yeah, I think I would also go 3 actually. I think I enjoyed lots of things about it. I think it's quite a beautiful film, but I don't think I'd go out of my way probably to recommend it specifically. I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a 3. I certainly wouldn't kind of recommend it to children, but I would recommend it to anyone who has read the book and is, has enjoyed the book, or at least has some interest in the book to see it. And I'd kind of recommend it to anyone who has a real interest in animation as well, because there's a lot of different elements of animation in it, and it's, there are some really, really beautiful moments in it. But so 3.
Yeah,
3 in that one.
I think it's a clean sweep of 3s here.
Yeah,
nice film, and I think the animation, the 3 different animations in the same film, had me kind of engrossed in it in the most kind of way. I think the stock frame stuff. I'm really into stock frame animation at the moment. Why can't I say animation today? What's going on? Repeat viewing score. Help me out.
Right. Okay. So this is. Will I watch it again? I mean, I think I'm going to go for a 3, steadily. I would watch it again for sure, but I've only got so much time in my life. So 3.
Yeah, me too. I think I'm going to go 3. I would watch it again, but I wouldn't go out of my way to, probably.
I'm going to give it a 1.
Ooh.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't watch it again. I got a little bit distracted towards the end, and I don't know. I think if I had more of a passion towards the book, I'd probably feel more inclined to rewatch it. But it didn't really grab me.
I'm going to go for a 2 because I did like it, but not so much as to. It's like you say, I've only got so much time, and Netflix has got lots of Disney films on there versus this.
Yeah.
Lion King, I don't know if Lion King's on it, but there's so many Disney films I'm happy to watch at the drop of a hat.
I'd take Frozen over this any day of the week.
So the Frozen test, the Frozen benchmark, the small screen score. Did you feel the need to? Would you have benefited from watching this in the cinema?
Well, I mean, not again, but we watched this and then just paused it in the middle and had a cup of tea and then watched the end. So I like it more, I think, for a small screen, because I wouldn't have been able to do that in the cinema. And I mean, cause that's the thing, for a film to really, for me to want to go and see a film in the cinema, it has to kind of call out to me as a cinematic experience.
Yeah.
And although this film has got a lot of beautiful different styles, so I guess it would be interesting to see on a big screen in that respect. It's not like a full body experience, you know, like it's not. So yeah, I would go for 4, I guess. Yeah, 'cause I think it's quite good for small screen watching.
It's kind of difficult to compare when you haven't seen it on a big screen. I think I would have quite liked to have seen the paper animation in the cinema. But overall, on the whole, I don't think it really lost anything by not being in the cinema. So I'll go 4 too.
I'm going to do about a 3. I mean, it works on a little screen, but then it would have been nice to see it on a slightly bigger screen. But yeah, it kind of works. And I guess with the sort of length as well, if you are sort of watching it with younger children, then having the ability to kind of pause it is beneficial, I think.
Right.
Yeah, I'm going to go for 4. If I watched it again, I don't think I'd even slightly consider going to the cinema to watch it again. It would be a whole kind of Netflix thing.
Yeah.
And if you had kids who were like 8 or 9ish in your house, randomly nieces or nephews, and wanted to give them something, then that might be an option.
Yeah. I mean, that is the good thing about the internet and children's films as a combination.
Engagement score, guys. How engaged were you during this film?
Allowing for the tea breaks, of course.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. I think I was engaged, so I'm going to say 4, but I think that's probably going to be a high score, I reckon, but we'll see what everyone else thinks.
I think I'd go 3. I was relatively engaged, but I was also mind-wandery in a way that I'm not always in films. So I think it wasn't as immersive as it would need to be for a higher score from me.
Yeah, I'm a 3. I mean, for the first sort of hour or so, I was, pretty into it, and then sort of lost a little bit of interest and decided I was going to sort of read about it more and just kind of find out
What
who
is
the
going
cast
on in
were
this film I'm
and
watching?
a little
Yeah.
bit more about the book, and just got a little bit distracted on that. So 3, but I stuck with it towards the end.
Yeah.
So it kind of came back in towards the end, but yeah, about 3.
I think I'm a 3, maybe 2.5. I kind of waxed and waned throughout the film, and I think my favorite bit actually was when she got the bike and she just cycled as hard as she could with all her heart on her sleeve. And I thought, for me, that was the best bit of the film. And I was about 3/4 of the way through. Even when there's kind of stuff in the warehouse, wasn't there? And wasn't that? I don't know. That just didn't really grab me that much.
No, I know what you mean.
Yeah, so it kind of waxed and waned during the film. So I'll give it a 2.5. And that gives us a score of 3.0 exactly.
Yeah, I'd say a solid 3-star film. I think if I was giving it stars at the end when the credits come off.
Yeah.
On
Yeah, I
Netflix.
think that's
feels
fair.
about right.
I think that's fair.
All right, guys. So cheers for being on the show. Are there any questions that that we should have asked you, do you think?
No, I mean, I can't really think of anything more to add to what we've said. I mean, I was as an adaptation of the book, I thought it was definitely a good adaptation, but it's not up there with my favorite adaptations of kids' books. Like Where the Wild Things Are is much more in my heart than this. Even though that film adapts that story in a completely different direction, it's nothing like the book. And any kid that reads that book, because I used to do work with the under 5s,
Right.
and it's not an under 5s film where the Wild Things Are, even though it's an under 5s book, but it really got to the heart and soul of that book in that film. And I don't think that this book fully got to the heart and soul of the Little Prince for me, I guess.
Cool. Well, if you want to remind us where we can find you online and where we can listen to your podcast.
So you can find The Family Tree, which is a magical realist family drama, at thefamilytreepodcast.co.uk. There you will find me, which is Jen Adams-Thwaite, who is Jen Adams-Thwaite, and
She likes grammar. And me, Dave Pickering, you will find there too. And I make a podcast called Getting Better Acquainted as well, which you can find at gettingbetteraquainted.co.uk. And I also am involved with Spark London's True Storytelling, which is also a podcast that you can check out. I've got a podcast called Stand Up Tragedy, and I'll leave the listing of podcasts at that point. But check me out on davepickeringstoryteller.co.uk, and you can find out more about me, or just tweet me at GooseFat101.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, guys.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, guys, hope you enjoyed the chat there about Little Prince, the classic kid story made Netflix film. Thanks to Dave and Jen from the Family Tree podcast. Go and listen to their podcast. Go and listen to their show. It's fantastic. Of course, come and visit us Go to us on iTunes, subscribe, review, share it with your friends. And if you want to find us online, you can do at Flixwatcher Pod on Twitter, and visit us on our website, flixwatcher.tv. Of course, big thanks to GL Productions, Tony and Jay and Greg for the amazing editing skills, and to Mighty People for the tunes you can hear now.